16. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد. We stopped last week we did the first three of the major sins, the 7 major sins. And not that the major sins are only 7, but based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentioned the 7 major sins. And he discussed already, how do we know something is a major sin? And then we went through the first 3, Sabr al-Mubiqat, the 7 deadly or poisonous or major sins. طيب. The first one was, and the most dangerous of everything is ashirk, to worship other than Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala in any way, shape, or form. The second one was as-sihr, magic, to perform magic. Seeking out magic, seeking help through magic, anything having to do with magic. That as-sihr is from the major sins, and it is a form of kufr, disbelief. Magic, practicing magic is a form of kufr. And the third one was qatl al-nafs allati harrama Allahu illa bil-haq, murder, to kill a person without due right, unjustly, as it says, unjust killing of a sacred life. We're on page 316, because there is a time when killing of a sacred life is allowed, but that would be just like in any other established government. Like we got capital punishment, where the government arranges for somebody to be put to death. All right, somebody's on death row and they wait, and then they're put to death. Even in that case, when somebody's put to death, somebody had to do the injection, somebody had to push the button for the electric chair, somebody had to do something. That person who does that, right, do they fall under the same category as a person who kills somebody and murders somebody out in the street? Right? They don't. Right? They're operating under an organized government, an organized system. And it's the same thing in Islam, that there are times when people are to be put to death. So outside of those times that are legislated Islamically, to put someone to murder somebody unjustly is from the major sins. It's from the major sins. Qatl al-nafs. Tayyib. And he says also that includes a person killing himself. Suicide is included in that. Tayyib. Number 4, which is on page, I think that's 317, 316. Akl al-mal al-yatim. It says consuming the wealth of the orphans. Eating, and it says they use the word akl, and as he says, this isn't because most of the time the money is used for a person to feed themselves. Not that it's not used for other things, but majority of the time. Tayyib. It brings the ayah first, where Allah said, "Inna alladhina ya'kuluna amwal al-yatama ظُلْمًا إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ نَارًا." In Surah An-Nisa, ayah number 10. Allah said, whoever eats the wealth of the orphan, it says, verily those who unjustly eat up the property of the orphans, they eat up only a fire in their bellies. Whoever eats the wealth of an orphan, right? Unjustly, ظُلْمًا, they oppress the orphan. In this case, what they're eating is the fire. They only eat from the fire in their bellies. Now the question is, what is an orphan? That's the question. Or is it clear what an orphan is? It's clear? Like, what's an orphan? A person who doesn't have parents. Sahih? La, it's not an orphan. La, Islamically, that's not an orphan. Islamically, an orphan, whenever you talk about ahkam, the rulings in Islam, an orphan is not a person who doesn't have their parents. An orphan in Islam is the child who hasn't reached the age of puberty, whose father passed away. The mother can still be living, and they're still considered an orphan, which shows the importance of the father. We know the importance of the mother because the Prophet ﷺ told us. When the man asked him who is most deserving of my good companionship, who is most deserving of my good treatment, and he said ummuk. He said your mother 3 times, right? And then he said your father on the 4th time. Islamically, the orphan. Whenever you hear the word yatim, the orphan is the child who hasn't reached the age of puberty. They're still a child, and their father dies, not their mother. La mat, that the father died, and that's a whole different scenario. So this is the orphan, which is dangerous because a lot of us might have orphans under our care and we don't know it. A lot of people are step parents, right? A lot of people are step parents. That means they're taking care of a child who is possibly not theirs. They're maybe taking care of a child who's an orphan. Their father is deceased. And then if that's the case, then we got to be careful to make sure that the money that we have that's supposed to be spent on the orphan is spent on the orphan, right? That we're not using the orphan's money and the orphan doesn't have what the child doesn't have what they need, and we spend it on our own, right? Our own things. And that's what's meant by eating or consuming the wealth of the orphan, that we're using it, as he says here, the tansis huna ala al-akl. The fact that it says eating doesn't mean that the person who's in charge of the child's money is only spending it on food, right? Food is mentioned because that's the most common way that people spend money, possibly, right? He says, وَإِلَّا أَيُّ إِتْلَافٍ لِمَالِ الْيَتِيمِ سَوَاءً بِالْأَكْلِ أو, he said, any way that a person uses the orphan's money outside of what is needed for the orphan, right? Whether it's eating or يَشْتَرِي بِهِ ثِيَابٍ, or shopping, buying clothes, right? Or buying houses. Orphans, it's possible a person gets a lot of money. It's possible the child gets a lot of money, right? It's supposed to be designated to the child monthly. But who gets the money? An adult receives the money. The adult's responsibility is to disseminate the money to the child as needed. Now, what if the adult takes the money, they start investing in houses for themselves, they start doing this with, right? They could fall under eating from the wealth of the orphan unjustly, which is dangerous because it's from the major sins, which doesn't necessarily mean a major sin. Again, a major sin doesn't equal kufr. Because a person commits a major sin doesn't automatically mean they're not Muslim anymore. It depends on the sin. So we can't hear major sin and say, okay, whoever does that, not Muslim anymore. No. It depends on what it is. Some of them do, but not all of them. Oppression, no doubt. It's oppression. It's oppression to the child. The child has a haqq. The child has a right, and the person doesn't give the child his right, but they're using the money to their own benefit. He says, oh, yashtari bihi markuban, or they buy markub. As we say, they buy something to ride on. They buy a car, they buy bikes, they buy motorcycles, mopeds, they buy whatever they're using to get around with, and the child is not getting their haqq. They're right, yes. The child is not supposed to. No. It's not that the adult gives the child the money, because the child is not ready to accept the money on that level. Because you're talking about, for example, an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old or even a 10-year-old, right? They're not ready yet. So that's why it's so important that the adult has the child is at the mercy of the adult who's in charge of the money. The child is in a weak situation in reality. They're under the care of the adult. And this is why it's such a big crime, a huge crime Islamically, that a person takes advantage of a child who in reality, Allah removed one of their parents from the dunya. That's just the reality. The father's not there, right? And that a person is trusted to take care of that child, and they betray that trust. And this is from the major sins. Not that we supposed to give a 7-year-old or even a 12-year-old money like that, right? Because they're going to spend it on, right? They're not going to disperse of it wisely, and that's the point. The point is that the child is taken care of, not that we leave the child to themselves and they figure it out on their own. Right. Not for the child, because the child hasn't reached the age of puberty. Therefore, they're not Islamically responsible for their actions. They're in the training stage until they reach the age of puberty. So generally, yeah, any of us, anytime we spend money and we waste and we do something that's displeasing to Allah, we oppress our own selves, all of us. The point of the person who takes care of the orphan is that doesn't happen, that we don't allow the child to do that. Therefore, whoever's put in that position has been given a major trust, and they're supposed to honor that trust. Tayyib. And he mentions all of that in the last paragraph. Tayyib, he says, number 5. وَقَالَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ وَأَقْلُ الرِّبَى أَقْلُ الرِّبَى. It says, use the words eating again. Here it says usury, riba, usury. Sometimes it's translated as interest, consuming interest. And this is from, as he says, riba min عظائم الذنوب وكبائرها. These are from the greatest and the major sins, riba. And then he brings the verses and the many ayat in the Quran. And this is on page 317. Allah destroys interest and gives increase for charities. The second verse on 317 is those who consume interest. الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي I'm sorry. يتخبطه الشيطان من المس. Those who consume interest cannot stand on the day of resurrection except as the one who is being beaten by the shaitan into insanity stands. طيب. Part of our problem is knowing what interest is. What is riba? Knowing what interest is and what interest isn't Islamically, not what it says on the paper in English. Islamic rulings are not connected to the English language. The rules in Islam, halal, haram, sunnah, bid'ah, makruh, mubah, what's allowed, what's hated, what's sunnah, what is recommended, what is obligatory, what is impermissible, is not connected to the English language. Meaning, we have to understand what is riba in Islam. What does Islam define interest as? Once we understand what Islam defines interest as, we go to any business that we deal with. We need to let them explain to us what the interest is they're talking about. Their interest has to match what interest is in Islam in order for it to be haram. Clear? What do? We go somewhere and it says interest, oh, that's haram. Why? Because we can't deal in interest, and it says they deal in interest. And the reality is, and I had a personal experience myself, when people say interest, you have to make sure that their interest matches what Islam says interest is before you count yourself out the deal. A lot of times we cut ourselves out of deals because we read it and it says interest. We don't ask no questions. What do you mean by interest? What's the interest in that? We don't dig at all, and we just stop right there. When it comes to contracts in Islam, what's important is the reality of the contract, not the wording. The wording is important, but it's possible for a person to be charging you interest Islamically, and they put another name on it. They call it something else. And the reality is still what? It's interest Islamically, no matter what you call it, right? And it's possible, I went to a bank, a credit union, it's possible they call it interest, right? And it's not interest Islamically. I said, well, wait a minute, I want a checking account with no interest. It's written on the wall, everything that comes with the checking account behind the lady. I said, I want a checking account, but I see I got interest on your checking account. She said, no, it's no interest. I said, it's interest. I'm reading it. It's a list of stuff that come with the account. She says, no, we just use that word because that's what people understand. That's what she said. That's why you got to ask and go further. Point being, once it's established that it's interest in the contract, that the interest is something that is not allowed Islamically, so we should not willingly go into contracts and deals that have interest on them. We shouldn't willingly do that. We living in America, some things are forced. We're not talking about things that we can't avoid. We're not talking about things that are unavoidable. We're talking about when we have a choice. We have a choice to deal in interest or not. Then we should definitely take the road of not dealing in interest to stay away from these threats that are found in the Quran. He says also dealing in interest. He says this gains the anger of Allah and the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kama ja'a fil hadith. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, La'na Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam akila riba wa mawkila wa katiba wa shahidehi. That the curse of Allah, or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam cursed the person who accepts interest and the person who pays the interest. This is on page the bottom of 317 is hadith. The acceptor of interest, the one who pays the interest, the one who records it, who writes it down, and the witnesses, whoever witnesses that contract, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam cursed these people. And again, if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if there's a curse connected to it, to the action, then this is a sign that, as the ulama say, from the signs. How do we know something is a major sin? Because there's a curse connected to the one who does it. Clear? There's a curse connected to the action. The person who accepts interest, the Prophet ﷺ cursed them, meaning he made dua that Allah move them away from the mercy of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. So it's serious. None of these are light. No sin is light. But Islamically, in reality, some things are worse than others. That's why some sins remove a person from Islam, and some sins do not remove a person from Islam. So sins are on different levels. Tayyib. Fadl. Who? All details for that need to be dealt with in the Kitab al-Buyur, the book of business transactions. And hopefully, inshallah, we can go through that, because I don't even know, honestly, I'm just being honest with you. When you deal with these things, you got to start from scratch. What does APR mean? You need to let people explain it to you. Most people want to assume. If you assume something, then you assume it. And you go into it either with knowledge or without knowledge, right? I'm going to say, I don't know. I'll just say, what is that? You say it's the APR. What's the APR? Now you got to explain to me. And then we have to compare. Most important thing is what it is. Firstly, what? Islamically. What does Islam say? What does Islam say about interest? The definition of interest Islamically. Then we can move to APR or whatever other initials and then you compare that to the definition Islamically. It's not a book, it's a chapter. The chapter of business transactions. That's the chapter that it's usually in. Allah, we're not getting into that, akhi. We need a whole specific class to deal with those specifics, inshallah. Just so we can be clear about, that's not something we could brush over real quick. Them contracts, because those are things we're dealing with every day, and they need a lot. They need attention. They need some serious attention. But he mentions here, if anybody has a book, this is important. He says, at the top of page 318, a person is not safe from this punishment by changing the name of interest. Just because you change the name, if it's interest Islamically and you change the name, that don't mean you're safe from what Allah said. Rather, you change the name. You might change it to profit. This is just the profit, or benefit, or any other name. The consideration, and this is the qaida. The qaida is al-ibra bil-haqa'iq wa in ghayyirat al-asma. The consideration is given to the reality, not the name. The reality of what the contract entails is what counts, not the name you put on it. I'm not getting into no details because they all need their specifics. They all got specifics. All we want to know is, because number one, we can't start going into car notes because we haven't gone into what Islam says first. We haven't gone to the definition of riba in Islam. That's the problem. We starting off with car notes, mortgages, because what they say is interest on it. And we don't know what interest is Islamically. Just like we just didn't know what an orphan was Islamically. Right? So the orphan is what? A kid with no parents. No, not Islamically. Islamically, the orphan, right? The child that hasn't reached the age of puberty, right? That doesn't have their father passed away. That's an orphan Islamically. Now they say interest. Well, what is interest Islamically? That's where we got to start. We start there and then we move to, okay, let's look at what they say about this. Let's look at this. You understand? That's why it says, and this is a principle here, the reality of sin does not change even if the name is changed. Even if you change the name of it, that doesn't change the reality of that sin or of that thing. طيب. It says number 6, which is the 6th major sin, التولي يوم الزحف, which is to run in the time of war. It says fleeing from the battlefield. All right. What does that mean? Fleeing from the battlefield. Yeah, there's a war. You're in a war, right? We're not talking about no street corner stuff. We're talking about war, right? Soldiers, troops, they go to war. It's war, right? A person's in a war. They're commanders and chiefs, and everybody's designated to do a job, and a person runs. They turn away and they run away from, in that case, the battlefield. This is from the major sins. This is from the major sins, page 318. Whoever turns his back to them on such a day, unless it is to be a stratagem of war or to retreat to a troop of his own, he indeed has drawn upon himself the wrath of Allah, and his abode is hell. وَمَأْوَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمْ وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ. طيب. Allah made 2 exceptions in the verse, that whoever runs away, except if they're going to reposition, to fight. They're not leaving. They moved from one position to another because it's a better position for the war. This is not considered running, right? It's not considered that a person is running in that case. Tayyib, clear? Or if the people are going to meet with another group of their army, all of that is strategic. It's strategic movement within the war. Again, we're not talking about wars over corners and stuff like that. Warring over something, shooting at people over something that's haram in the first place, right? That has nothing to do with Islam. Shooting at people and murdering people over corners and drug blocks and stuff that we know, right, has nothing to do with our deen. That's not jihad. I heard people say that before. That's not fighting in the path of Allah. That you selling drugs, you're doing a haram, you're doing something we're not supposed to be doing as Muslims anyway. You out here sinning, and then when you get violated, you want to turn it Islamic. Now you want to be a Muslim when you get violated. No. This is a real war. They're Muslim countries. They're countries all over. Every country has an army, right? If you're in a Muslim country, you enter the army, it's a serious thing. You don't go to war and then you turn and run on a battlefield. That's considered to be from the major sins. And he mentions the reasons that what it does. It weakens the army itself. It gives strength to the enemies. They see the weakness in their enemy, and other things that go along with that. طيب. Number 7. قَفْ الْمُحْصَنَاتِ الْغَافِلَاتِ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. To accuse, and this is dangerous, y'all, accusing chaste women of lewdness. Accusing chaste women of lewdness, which means what? What does that mean? Saying a good woman did something that she didn't do. Well, what's a good woman? Pious woman. What's pious? A virgin? Possibly. Not necessarily, though. Not restricted to a virgin. Virgins are not the only women who are, as we say, pious, right? What else could be another word for pious? A woman who guards herself from unnecessary dealings or interactions with men. Okay. We assume people know what pious mean, but pious is one of them words that's in the books. People use it. And if you ask them what it means, it might be, you might get 10 different answers. A woman who don't really mix with men like that. Not that she doesn't like men, right? But she shies away. She has some type of shyness from dealing with men. Yes.
In this situation of pious is referring to
her shyness.
Yes.
She's shy when dealing with men. She's not really like all up in, as we say. She ain't all up in the mix. She not all up in all men faces and stuff in the face, stuff like that. As we say, she's real calm. You might not notice her, right? And she's not known to be.
So you say that a woman that's has haya?
I mean, what's haya? You see what I'm saying? Shyness. When you say something like that, she's known to have haya. That's assuming somebody know what haya means. She's known to be shy. What's shy look like? We know, everybody knows shy. She don't really talk much. She don't really say too much to anybody. Right? So nobody knows her to have a bad rep in the street. She's not known to be out there like that. Nobody knows her for that. We human. We come from neighborhoods. Everybody in the neighborhood knows people. Nobody knows her to be on that tight time. You come, a person comes, and they accuse her of lewd acts or being out there. I heard one term, it was, I don't want to. What's istiqama? That ain't enough. No, that's assuming people know what istiqama is. Tell you, nobody knows her to be out in the street like that, dealing with a bunch of men like that. And the person comes and accuses her of doing that. This is a major sin, which is, especially the time we live in, with the internet, and people accusing people based on them seeing something, and they assume from what they saw that she must be shot out. She out there. No witnesses, no anything. But they'll say, at the time we live in, as we say, as people say, it's clear. The video right there. Right? This is the people use as proof. It's clear right there. Right?
So you got your evidence, so that doesn't make it a false claim.
We're not going to get into that. Is video evidence in Islam? That's a whole nother situation. I don't want to get into that. Yes. Let's deal with the usle first. Because if you start getting into specific situations, everything got an exception in it. Originally, nobody knows this woman, this believing woman, to be on that type of time. Nobody knows her to do those type of things. A person comes and accuses her of being lewd, right? And loose. This is from the major sins, It says, these are women who their reputation at the time, nobody knows them for that. And she is not doing that. That's not what she's doing. And somebody comes and accuses her of that. Like, this is a major sin. Something.
So, I mean, a lot of it's been here, but overseas, with that bring forth lashes from that person if they don't provide it.
Yeah, we need to understand. In Muslim countries, a lot of these are crimes. And crimes, not all of them, but crimes when it comes to crimes between people, Beni Adam, between humans. If somebody commits a crime against you, then you have the ability to do what? Huh? If somebody commits a crime, what's the procedure? Huh? You report it. It's a report, right? Then what happens? It goes to court. All right, person has to go in front of the judge. There's going to be either they're going to be found guilty or not guilty. If they're found guilty, then it's what? A punishment. Okay, it's the same thing in the Islamic court system. It's the same thing. There's a crime. This is a crime, right? A person can go to the court and complain. They're accusing me of such and such. Now they have to do what? Produce proof. If they can't produce proof, then they're what? That means they're going to be found guilty of whatever, right? Based on what they're found, based on the crime, is going to dictate the punishment for that crime. In America? Allah Allah. Who?
I was thinking Hampton, but
Who?
Hampton. But
That's the name of the city?
yes.
What is it?
Hampton.
SubhanAllah, I never heard of that. MashaAllah. Yeah, I know the Mesh. I never heard of that city though. I heard of it being like arbitrators in the court system. Like even here, they was trying to get some arbitrators downtown in the court system, so when Muslims have issues, they can come and deal with the Islamic arbitrator there before even without even going to the judge or law alam how far they was going to take it, but the Islamic authority there would deal with the Muslim problems when they came down there. As far as a judge, I don't know. Not that I know of a law alam. And I'm not saying it's not. I just don't know of any. But yeah, that was number 7, mentioned from the hadith. But of course, it's not restricted. The major sins are not restricted to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ or that one hadith. There's other hadith. That one hadith said 7. And this is why he says, rahimahullah, he says, wa minha, meaning, and from the major sins also, uquq al-walidain, disrespect and dishonoring the parents. Disrespect and dishonoring the parents. وَالْوَالِدَانْ هُمَا أَحَقُّ النَّاسِ بِحُسْنِ الصُّحْبَةِ. And the parents are the most, these people have the most right to be respected and honored. It's important that nowhere do we find that the parents are to be honored because they are Muslims and that they can be dishonored because they're not Muslims. There's nowhere found. The parents are left general in the Quran. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And be good to the parents. So it says here, from the major sins, disobeying the parents. Disobeying the parents. Of course, this is as long as the parents do not command us to do anything that is haram. Command us to do something that the Muslims are not supposed to do. Right? Allah said in the Quran, وَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانِ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا. And we have commanded mankind to be good to the parents. And there's a few verses here. It's a few verses that we should see. And we have enjoined on man to be good and dutiful to his parents. 319. At the top of 320, it's another verse. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ بِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Your Lord has decreed and commanded that you worship him alone and that you be dutiful and good to your parents. So Allah mentioned, along with his worship, his tawheed, that a person is dutiful and respectful and honors the parents, which shows the importance of it, of honoring the parents. It depends on how off topic it is.
So speaking about the honor of parents, how does that correlate to the hadith of the Prophet?
So.
Where it's sort of like said, if a woman was commanded to prostrate to anyone other than Allah,
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yes.
So Even those ayat is that
Hmm.
who has higher right of obedience?
Allah Alam, Shaykh. Allah Alam.
I would me personally, I think the parents, but that's not, we don't deem it not what we think.
Allahu Alam. Hmm.
Another question, okay. So when it comes to the line of children,
Hmm.
when we had to endure the harms of people, so even if it's regarding your parents, we have to honor them.
No doubt.
It's still endure that harm, but still honor them.
No doubt.
So that still apply. Like,
It always applies. There's no time Islamically we have not been given the green light in Islam to disrespect our parents or no situation. And it's possible that the parent oppresses the child. It's possible. Islam doesn't give us the green light to oppress them back.
So even when not giving them dawah, we still have to endure their harm.
You say even when not giving them dawah? Mm-hmm. No doubt.
We still have to endure the harm, even when not calling them.
No doubt. No doubt. There's no time that we are given the green light to disrespect our parents, Muslim or non-Muslim. And that's the usul. The usul is that we honor and respect the parents. That's the origin. In order to come off that, we need text that will allow us to come off of that.
So, I don't know if I should wait. I feel like, let's just say something. And I know that she won't even have to do it. I know that it be from her pen. So in my head, I'm like, I tripped. So I don't like ignore, but if she gives a suggestion, like I kind of I show I'm being sensitive.
Right. Okay. What's the problem?
I don't even think this is tricky, but this is sure that she might be tricky.
Oh, some advice she gave you?
Anything.
You mean she gave you advice you don't think it's going to work?
Yeah, or just like,
Okay, but it's a way to respectfully disagree with people.
Yeah, like you said, like you don't disrespect it.
Yeah, you don't disrespect it. You listen.
You know in the back of the head, I'm not doing this. But you don't got to.
You don't have to verbalize, I ain't doing that. That's crazy.
when I was a kid, she cried. She like, listen to everybody.
Well, if it's nothing haram, if she advises you to do something that's nothing haram, it's not gonna cause no harm, then just to soften her heart, it might be better to do it. It's not like she, you know what I'm saying? Not like she asks you to do something that's impermissible Islamically. You might not get the best turnout, right? Possibly, depending on what it is. Depending on what it is, that might be the best thing for that situation, which takes hikmah, wisdom, understanding the pros and the cons of a situation, not just being mustajil in a rush. No, this is the hot. I'm standing up. No. Islam. If we look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and the life of the Sahaba, we don't find that type of mentality in a rush. No, you got to think. It's okay. We Muslim. It's okay to think. Use your brain. That's probably not the best thing to do right now. Are they telling us to worship other than Allah? No. What are you telling? They just saying that you shouldn't do. Why? I don't think that's the best. Okay, it may not be. Right? As long as it's not going to cause no serious harm, it may be in the situation. It may be better just for the heart, just for the keeping the connection to the heart.
Follow that, which is good. It comes from a Assyrian slave. So, like, as long as they're not calling you to evil, that which
right.
It's hard to honor in the book.
Especially when it comes to the parents. And even more, especially when it comes to the mother. Depending on what it is. طيب, number 9, قطيعة الرحم. The next major sin he mentioned is, as it is, severing the ties of kinship. Severing the ties of kinship, which means what? Cutting your family members off. Like, I don't deal with them nihaiyan. I ain't dealing with them at all. Last time I was over there, they turned the music on when I came in. I'm done with them. They invited me to the Christmas party. I'm done. I'm done. Like, Some people go that far. I'm done. I'm not talking to them no more. Like, just cut them off. I'm not responding to no messages. I'm not going to deal with them. If they call me, I'm not answering. They might change their phone number, right? To totally cut the family ties is from the major sins. Now, we're not talking about sifting. I may go to this event. This event might a little be too much. I don't know about this one. But still, communication is one thing. To totally block people off. And now, I removed all of them off the social media. I unfollowed everybody. That's right. To us, and on the other side, they're gonna feel like, what? He cut me off. And that's not from Islam. Islam is a major sin to sever, to cut off the family.
So I was gonna say, speaking in reference to social media, so this person, for example, I had a family member, and I didn't like what he was posting on social media. So I followed him. I didn't ask him, like, Mom, thank you for social media. If I don't like what you're doing, I'm not following you. I'm not going to ask you to engage with your post. That's not following you. To them, it was way bigger than it was to me.
Right.
I didn't cut the tie. I don't feel as though, like, I don't have an issue with you. But to them, they like, oh,
yeah, no doubt.
So in that situation, am I wrong or am I?
Well, look at the situation. You got to look at the effect that it has.
That's what I'm saying.
As a Muslim, in a situation like this, in the time that we live in, people take you unfollowing them on social media personal. People that you don't know, people that's not family, take it personal. Sound crazy. That sounds crazy to me, but people that you not family with, you don't even know them like that. You might have never spoke to them ever. If they notice you unfollow them, they might really have an attitude with you, right? Let alone a family member. If that's the case we living in, then what would be the better thing to do? No, what's the cool? Y'all want to see it, but what's the best thing to do in that situation? You already know you're going to unfollow, but with that, you need to do what? Yeah, that's the time we live in. The time we live in, it need to be some communication. Listen, I had to do that, man, because I'm doing this stuff you be putting up, be kind of crazy coming up on my line. So, you know what I mean? I had to, you know what I mean? It's still, we are who we are. It's still love, but it got to be, I mean, if we serious about this, knowing the effect that it's going to have if you do that, it got to be some communication. Anything outside of communication is going to be what it was. They look at it like you cut me off, and that's not what it is. But they don't know it's not what it is unless you tell them that. So communication would have definitely been better.
I had two questions. Okay, you have a husband and a wife. You have a child. The child is allowed. The father has rights to the father. They part ways. So the mother keeps the child away from the father. Even though he has rights, she's keeping him away from the father. That's several times.
On her part?
Yes.
Allah Alam, maybe. That's dangerous, maybe. Because that's not the child. That's not the child's doing. That's the parents doing. Whether it's the mother doing it or the father doing it. When parents split, whether it's the mother or the father keeping the child away from the other parent, that's dhulm, that's oppression, number one. Both parents have rights. It took two people to make the baby, right? Those two people have rights, whether it's the mother or the father. They both have rights. For one of them to take and keep the child away from the other parent intentionally, number one, is going to cause damage to the child, number one. The parent think that they doing something, but in reality, it's causing damage to the child and it's going to come back. That damage is going to show up eventually. It look cute now because they small and they still wearing sneakers and they running around and they don't understand nothing. But it's going to come back. So number one is oppression for the other parent because the other parent doesn't get their right. Number two is doing damage to the child. Could it fall under severing the ties? Allahu Alam. Severing it possibly. That the person intentionally keeps the child away from the other parent, possibly. How does the child grow up now without the other parent when they have the ability to be there? The other parent has the ability to be there, and the other parent wants to be there. And the other parent, whether it's the mother or the father, intentionally keeps the child away. Allahu Alam, that could be a form of cutting the ties. And we're gonna deal with that hopefully in the marriage class coming up,
I
inshallah.
I'm asking for a clarification of oppression cannot be as so if someone oppresses me, I don't automatically have the right to oppress them, correct?
Correct.
Like in that situation, because I know this those situations, people will, men and women, like you said, they keep the child away based off of, and they'll try to use an Islamic excuse. Like the man might say, oh, the woman is not doing her motherly duties or whatever the motherly duties. I'm not letting her see the child, she's not being the fit mother. Not that the child is in danger, not whatever. In his opinion, she's not being, or Islamically, she's not being the fit mother. So now I'm gonna oppress her and take the child, because she's oppressing the child or oppressing me or whatever.
Allah Alam. But a lot of times, people complaints, the complaint Islamically to do what they did, a lot of times it's not a valid excuse. They did it, but does that Islamically, do you have the right to do that Islamically? A lot of times people don't, and they think they do. That's the problem. They think that Islam, I can do this, and they're using some Islam. And many times people don't have the right to do that. And that's the problem, not learning, right, what the rights are and what they're not. What am I allowed, how far am I allowed to go? And when do I have to stop? That's the problem. Because what we do is we jump out the jet first. Then we go back and we want to look in the books and call everybody around and ask everybody and shoot all around. Ask everybody the question. Now, this is what I did. Did I do it right? You did it wrong already because you jumped out the jet first and then you asked. When you're supposed to do what? Act on knowledge. You're supposed to have knowledge and then act. Don't go do something crazy or not crazy. Do something out of emotion. And then at the end of the day, it is crazy. And then you want to turn around and look for something in Islam to support what you did. It doesn't work like that. And a lot of times, that's the problem. A lot of times, that's the problem. Say it again. No doubt.
So they may not understand or take oppression on the concept.
I hope we even understand what oppression is. No. In English.
Oh, okay.
What's another word for oppression in English? Because a lot of people, y'all would be surprised. Huh? A lot. Not more not. Come on, man. You listen. You talking to a person who don't know anything about anything. Oppression. Unfair treatment. I think everybody understands that it's not fair, right? Oppression is you're not being fair. It's not fair that two people come together, make a baby. It doesn't work out. It's not fair that one person hogs the baby and doesn't allow the other person any contact. It's not fair. That's oppression. You with me? It ain't fair. It ain't cool, a bad joint, whatever you want to say. It ain't right, right? It's oppression. We say oppression, assuming everybody understands what oppression means. Oppression is unfair treatment. And nowhere Islamically do we have the right to oppress people. That's the origin. The origin is that we don't oppress. We don't treat anybody unfair and unjust. That's the origin. Whether Muslim, non-Muslim. We don't have a green light on people because they're not Muslim to just, right, treat them unjustly. You should. You grow without a parent? You should. Why should you care? You grow without a parent that wasn't there, right? The parent didn't do their job like they're supposed to do, right? Yeah, no doubt. That was unfair treatment. If the parent did that intentionally, that was unfair treatment by the parent. You grow up as an adult, you should want a relationship with them. Why wouldn't you? Because they oppressed you, now what? You want to give them back that? You want to give it back to them? You want to give them the harm back? No doubt it hurts. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt. That wasn't the question, though. That wasn't the question. I'm only dealing with the question. Should you want to have a relationship with them? You should. Why? Because Allah said in the Quran, He told us that they're what? He commanded us to be good to the parents. In order for us to come off of that command, we need something from text that allows us to. And every situation different. We moving on, Sheikh. We moving on. It could be. It could be. It could be. No, it could be. And if we Muslim, we think about all this stuff, we got less time for all the nonsense that be going on. If we dealing with all this, like for real, as individuals, we all got family members that ain't Muslim. If we really dealing with all this, there's less time for the nonsense that be going on throughout our daily lives. Scrolling and looking at, wasting time, talking to people about nothing that has no benefit. It's less time for that because we know we got a bigger job in front of us. Parents not Muslim, aunts, cousins, people we love and grew up with, not Muslim, right? If we really dealing with that, dawah-wise, and then we got less time. No, you're done. But look. That's homework for next week. Khalas. Tayyib. Number 10. No, because for honestly, that oppression and unjust treatment, honestly, that's a whole hadith in itself. It's a whole hadith in the Prophet in itself. And if we have to start applying stuff to us, not just these general concepts in Islam. Generally in Islam, we shouldn't oppress people. All right, what that means, don't oppress your wife. The wife don't oppress the husband. Don't oppress your child that doesn't live with you. Don't oppress your mother that's not a Muslim, your father that's not a Muslim, your aunts. That means you don't do it. That means we don't do it. That don't just mean it's just out there in the sky and a good Muslim wouldn't do that, but I ain't there yet. No, we gotta apply stuff to us to make it real. You understand? Tayyib. He says after that, number 10, the 10th major sin was shahadatu zur. Let's see how it's translated here. Bearing false witness, which means what? Lying? No, that's kadhib. Swearing by Allah, and you know it's not true. Bearing false witness. That's what it says in the book. Lies. No. Lying under oath.
You can lie, say you was there when you can say, oh, brother, you was there when I got married. You lying.
Right. Somebody use you as a witness, right? And you come, they pull you in as a witness on something. Whether it's and you come to the situation and you lie. That's bearing false witness. You did not hear it. You did not see it. You really don't know what happened. But what you do know is the person that asked you to come, that's your man. Or y'all, that's your sister. Y'all grew up together. That's your cousin. And we riding. Even if I don't know what the situation is. They prep you before you get there. Listen, this will happen. Just say this. You go there and you stand in and you lie. That's bearing false witness. It doesn't have to be in the courtroom either, y'all.
So, for example, if me and you're speaking or we're having an issue and I want to spare your feelings and I make an oath and I lie and then I bring him into it, it's not.
We dealing with all usul. We dealing with all origins. Why? Because it can always be exceptions to the rule. We're not dealing with the exceptions. The exceptions have to be dealt with on a case by case. The rule is that to bear false witness, to somebody bring you as a witness and you lie about it, is a major sin. That's the rule. If we start getting into exceptions, then we could be here all night because everything is going to change based on the situation. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. But the rule is somebody brings you to the situation and they ask you a question. Didn't he say this? Either you heard him say it or you didn't hear him say it. That's what's on the Muslim. Not because me and you know what I mean, this a hit or whatever. Not as a Muslim. Muslims don't do that. The Muslim goes and either you saw it or you didn't see it. Either you heard it or you didn't hear it. Either you were there or you were not there. It don't matter. I brought you all the way down here and I thought you said you saw it. Man, honestly, I thought I did. But when I heard the story again, I really didn't. By the time I turned around, y'all was out front. I don't know what happened out front. We Muslim. The Muslims are the honest people. If we don't know that, we're supposed to be honest people, like not liars. Just in case we don't know what honest is. We're not supposed to be people who just lie for no reason. We lying to get over on people. That's not the adab, the etiquette, and the makeup of the Muslim. Tayyib. So he says, shahadatu zur. He says, wa zur huwa al-kadhib wal-buhtan. It is to lie. Lying is from shahadatu zur. He says, to show how serious this false testimony is, he says, جاءت شهادة الزور قرينة للشرك في القرآن والسنة. That Allah mentioned bearing false witness alongside of shirk. When he mentioned about shirk, he mentioned about bearing false witness. Where Allah said, فَاجْتَنِبُوا الرِّجْسَ مِنَ الْأَوْثَانِ وَاجْتَنِبُوا قَوْلَ الزُّورِ. Where Allah says, stay away from the awthan, worshiping the idols, and stay away from lying. As it says here, shun lying speech. Shahadat al-zur. طيب. The Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, أَلَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِأَكْبَرِ الْكَبَائِرِ. Should I not inform you? He said, should not tell you. You want me to tell you one of the greatest sins? قَالُوا بَلَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. They said, of course, O Messenger of Allah. Who's the they? The Sahaba, the companions. طيب, the companions said, رضي الله عنهم, of course, O Messenger of Allah. He said, قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, الإشراك بالله. He said to put partners with Allah, shirk, to make shirk with Allah, number one. وعقوق الوالدين, to be dishonorable and disrespecting, disobeying the parents, number two. It says, وَجَلَسَ وَكَانَ مُتَّكِئًا فَقَالَ. It said he was leaning over, he sat up for the third one. فَقَالَ أَلَا وَهُوَ قَوْلُ الزُّورِ. And that is that a person gives false testimony. A person lies when they're called to be a witness. Then they said, فَمَا زَالَ يُكَرِّرُهَا حَتَّى قُلْنَا لَيْتَهُ سَكَتْ. He said, he kept saying it. He kept repeating it over and over. Qawl az-zur, a person gives false testimony. He said they kept saying it. He kept saying it until we were saying, like, I wish he would stop saying it. That's how important it is to be honest when we called to witness something. And this happens all the time between business deals. People buy stuff off people and they say, didn't he say he was doing this? It happens with husband and wife. It happens all the time. What we call in what? A third party. We call our witness to the table. And the people we usually call is usually who? It's usually a close friend of mine that I know they're going to be feeling what I'm saying anyway. Rarely do people want to get somebody, as they say, is neutral. They don't really have no ties to you. You don't have no tie to me. Let's get them to see what they think about it. Let's see, because this person was there. My man was there, but that's your man. He going to say that. Well, she was there with y'all friends. She go, let's get this person. I don't know, but they were there. They saw the whole thing. Let's go talk to them. No, I don't know, bull. He's a witness, right? Muslim, he's a witness. Why not? And the witness, it's on the witness. It's on the witness. It doesn't matter what the person call you to. It doesn't matter if they're upset if you don't stand in for them. It doesn't make a difference because the witness is going to be called Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's on the person who witnessing. That's on them to say what the truth is. Whether the person who called us to the table likes it or they dislike it. It's on the witness to be truthful in their statement. And he says that shahadatul zur jarimatun kubra. This is a serious crime because it gives away other people's rights. It gives away the haqq of somebody else, right? It could be property. Somebody stands in and they lie in order for somebody to get the deed to a house, right? Somebody signs a paper lying about a person owning a house, right? It could be property. And if it's not really their house, that means what just happened? That means you took somebody else's house. You took somebody else's property, right? And this is why it says the bottom of page 322, bearing false witness is a major crime because it infringes on the rights of others and consumes the wealth of the people with falsehood. And perhaps it can escalate to taking the lives of the innocent. It's possible somebody goes to court and lie, right? Lie in their testimony, and the person is given a death penalty. It's possible. Or it's possible just on the street. Somebody lies and say, yeah, you did such and such. No, and then the person reacts and they go kill somebody based on a false testimony. And that really wasn't the case.
So the purpose is you're sworn in. You're sworn in, so therefore let's make another oath.
No doubt. Even if he wasn't sworn in. Regardless, a person brings a Muslim as a witness before Allah. And then you lie before Allah. Of course. Of course you can opt out. Oh, you talking about for court?
You know what I'm saying?
In general.
And they were like,
Yeah, somebody say, yo,
I'm like,
no, I ain't see it. Yeah, that's, yeah. You can opt out. Now, if you saw it and you know what it is, and it's about somebody's hot, then you should say what it is. Whether whoever like it, whoever, this is what I saw. I don't know what you meant by when you did it. I don't know what that statement meant. This is what I saw and what I heard. I was sitting there, I was reading. I was sitting there, I was in line to get a, right, whatever I was doing, smoothie. You know what I'm saying? I heard, this is all I heard. I don't know what you mean by that, but yeah, I heard him say that. Okay, now what? That's on y'all to deal with. Or I'm not sure what he said. I was there, but I honestly, I was there, but I wasn't paying attention. I heard y'all talking, but I wasn't paying attention, so I can't really honestly say who said what. Truthful, yeah. And you save yourself. طيب. We'll stop with this one. There's only a couple left. Inshallah, we'll finish next week. Lastly, he says, the shahid az-zur zalim min jihad kathira. He said the person who gives the false testimony is unfair to people in numerous ways. And he mentions 4 ways here. He says, firstly, that they lie. Min jihat al-kadhib, that they lie. So when they lie, right, this is a form of oppression. It's not being fair that you lie about a situation. You didn't see it. You didn't hear it. You weren't there. You don't know anything connected to it. Or what you know is not really accurate. Or what you say, you know the truth, but you lie and say something that's not accurate. Because it's possible you do know the truth. It's possible you go say something and then you lie intentionally. Right? So he says it's built on kadhib. So either way, it's kadhib. If you go in there saying you saw something and you didn't see it, that's lying. If you go in there saying you heard something you didn't hear, that's lying. If you do know what really happened, and then you go in there and you go to the situation and you say something else happened, it's lying. So either way, and then if you say you don't know what happened, right, and you really do, then you're lying. So the thing is, if that's the case, the most thing is be honest. It's possible, y'all. It's possible a person is there, hadir, as they say, and not paying attention. Y'all have a whole conversation, then it turn into an argument. And then somebody gonna come to you and say, yo, you was sitting right there. Didn't he say such and such? You feel the pressure on because he hyped. Just because you hyped don't mean you're right. You can be hyping wrong. You know what I'm saying? We're not forced to say, no, you did. I don't know. I was sitting there, but honestly, I wasn't paying attention. I'm opting out. And I'm being honest. That's honest. I'm not lying. Honest and just. That's the Muslim. The second thing he says, that a person is unfair when they give a false testimony. He says, ظالم في حق من شهد عليه لأن بهذه الشهادة ضيع عليه حقا. That a person is unjust and the person is not fair to the person who you bore witness on. Meaning, somebody comes to you and they say, or we had a whole argument. I come to you and I say, yo, didn't you hear him say such and such? You didn't really hear it. And you say, yeah, he did say that. Right? You being unfair to the third person. That's the dhulm. And the Prophet ﷺ said, dhulm will be darkness yawm al-qiyamah. All the hadith we have about being unfair to people. That's unfair to the person that you said something about because you really didn't hear it. It says, number 3, ظالم لمن شهد له لأنه بهذه الشهادة أعطاه حقا ليس له. He said the third way, and there's 4 ways, and then we're going to stop and pray. He said the third way is that we're unfair to the person who came to us asking us to be a witness. Right? I come to you, me and Fulan have an argument. You sitting there, I come to you. Didn't you hear him say such and such? You didn't really hear it. You say, yeah, you did hear it. Well, how is that unfair to me? And it's possible that you give me, right, his rights, right? I'm enabled, on your word, I'm able now to take something from him that's really not mine or her. So you oppress me. Allah understand. طيب, he says in number 4, وظالم أيضا فيما يتعلق بالأموال. وقد قال عليه الصلاة والسلام إن دماءكم وأموالكم وأعراضكم عليكم حرام. He said, and number 4, that a person is unjust in things that are connected to money. Because it's possible you say something and you give a false witness about something. And somebody, as we say, they get money from that. It's a come up for me, and I'm going to break you off. All you got to do is say this. I got you. As soon as it come, right? And it's really, we taking from somebody who we shouldn't be taking from. So you're based on what? Based on your statement. In the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said that your blood, your money, and your honor is what? Alaykum haram. What is honor? It says your blood is haram. Alaykum, sacred. It's haram, that you can't transgress and murder people without, like, you don't have the authority to do that. We don't have the authority to do that, right? Amwalukum. We don't have the authority to just take people's money and take, right? Haram. And then he said, a'radakum. It's translated as honor. What does that mean, though? That somebody's honor is haram. Their reputation. Yeah. It's not allowed for us to tarnish the reputation of a Muslim. Haram. Haram. Based on the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. Haram. This is what we got to get to. When the Prophet ﷺ says something, when we have an asl, this is the origin. The origin is that I'm not allowed to say anything negative about you. You're a Muslim. The origin is that your name and your reputation is honored and has to be protected. That's the origin. Now, the only way I'm allowed to say something has to happen that takes me off of that allows me to say something negative about you. Everybody with me? That's how it works. That's the asl. The origin is that we're not allowed to speak about people and destroy their reputations, let alone now on the internet. We just spread stuff about people, right? That's the origin. In order for us to come off that origin, right, we need what? What's a proof? We need what? Proof from where? We need a text saying that, okay, now I can say something about you. Our problem is in this city, I don't know about other cities. In this city, it's flipped around. So everybody's living by the exception. So we think, some of us think it's okay. A lot of brothers and sisters, they think it's deen. They really think they deen and walk around talking about everybody. They really believe that the deen solidifies them to speak about people firstly. Not that your honor is sacred. Your honor is not sacred. Your reputation is not sacred. I got the green light. You have to prove to us that your honor is sacred. Now, what's going to happen is, of course, nobody's going to say that because it sounds crazy and it goes against what we taught in the Sunnah of the Prophet. But that's the reality. The reality is, I can say something. A lot of people walk around in this city. I can say something about anybody. That's the asl to many people, which goes against what the Prophet said. So the origin is, I can speak about anybody until they prove that their honor is sacred, until they prove that they're on the sunnah, until they prove that they understand the deen the way I understand the deen. Until they do that, it's open game, which goes against the asl. And that's the problem. The problem is many of our problems, we live in by the exceptions and not the rules. We're not living by the origin that's laid out in the Quran and Sunnah. We're living by the exception. So yes, there are times when I can speak about you, right? There are times I have to. There are times I have to mention something negative about you. But that's the exception. I don't live by that. Every time I see you, I got something negative to say. Every time somebody asks me about you. No, if you got a problem in business, right? If somebody's going to do business with you, then that's the exception. Okay, maybe I want to say something now. But every time somebody bring your name up, I got to bring up that you bad when you're doing business. Like, you understand? So the point being is Islam is to be lived by the rules, and those are the usul. And the usul, the asl may have exceptions under them, but the exceptions are not to be lived by.
Like what I get from you is more so, well, when we're living in this city, people pass judging.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen something from my little chick on the behind. He spoke about it. It was 6 movements, but I've seen 4. which is generally the open oppressor, the open innovator, and open oppressor, open innovator, and the open sin.
Mm.
Then we can pass judgment.
Mm.
So without witnessing any of that, you can't really.
Problem is, this is the problem. All that sounds great. The problem is, people don't even know what those things are. People don't be knowing what open. People don't know what innovation is like that. I know people, they assume things are innovation because they've never seen it. They don't practice. So for example, in IMFC, we don't do that. Nobody practices that here. So it must be funny. I ain't never seen that. So that must be like some type of bid'ah. I don't know what he was doing. Because what? Nobody does it here. And many people live like that. A lot of people don't know. We be assuming, y'all. We assume. How long you been Muslim?
10 plus years.
All right. If you're Muslim 10 plus years, your assumption is everybody understands, has that 10 plus years behind them Islamically. The assumption is everybody sat in as many classes as I've sat in. The assumption is everybody knows what I know. When they don't. A lot of people don't even know. It sounds crazy, y'all. If you talk to people, a lot of people don't know some basic things that Muslims not supposed to do. They don't know basic sins. No, we're not allowed. That's haram. A lot of people don't know that. So how can they identify if a person is openly sinning? How? And then if that's the case, if somebody is openly sinning, what's the protocol? Like how we handle a person that's openly sinning? You understand? What's the next step? A person's practicing bid'ah. Number one, people don't even be knowing what bid'ah is. They be talking it. Yeah, you talk to people. People don't know. That's the problem. People talking and don't really know. So now it must be bid'ah. Well, how is bid'ah when you got narration from the Salaf? Salaf did like this is an issue from the Salaf. You talking about bid'ah? If you say that, you done threw a whole bunch of people in that category of innovators with that, like ulama kibar. You done just talking. So it sounds good. It sounds good, but before we get there, we need to know what is sin. Is this a sin or not? Is this innovation or not? What was the third one? Mm-hmm. And oppression. Is this oppression or not? You can't identify something if you don't know what it is. And that's why Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, radiallahu anhu, he said that the people used to ask about the good. Right? He said everybody was asking about the khair, the good. He said, and I used to ask about the evil. Why? Out of fear I was going to fall into the evil. How are you going to stay away from evil if you don't know what's evil? We came comfortable. We comfortable with just, you know what I'm saying, talk, the words, just the surface knowledge. It's surface. It's surface knowledge. If you sit down, like turn all the lights, not the lights. Turn the lights off. Turn the cameras and all the internet and stuff off. Close the phones off. Turn off the recorders and all that. Had conversation. Islam. And see how much people, not like we battling, but conversation, no flashy stuff. You see, people don't really know. And most of us don't want to say we don't know. And that's a bigger problem. We don't know. We don't want to say we don't know. We're ashamed to say we don't know. Allahumma musta'an. We'll stop there, inshallah, till next week. Next week, hopefully, we'll finish this chapter. And then we're going to stop until the next class, which will be probably in a couple of weeks. Kitab al-Nikah, the book of marriage. Inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك بنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم